She's going to say something to you this week, and it's going to sound like nothing. A passing comment, barely a question at all, the kind of thing you could let float right by without a second thought. And most men do exactly that. They let it drift past like a coffee ring nobody bothers to wipe up. Stick with me for the next few minutes and I'll show you exactly what that comment actually is, why it's the boldest thing she'll probably ever say to you, and how to stop walking past the easiest opening you'll ever be handed. Here's the quiet tragedy that plays out over and over in kitchens and coffee shops and porches all over the world. A woman likes a man. She's curious about him, warm around him, genuinely interested. But she's not going to walk up and announce it, because that's never been how this works. Not for her generation, not for most women at all. So instead, she tests the water. She says something like, "I've always wanted to check out that little place downtown," or "We should do that sometime," or "You'll have to show me how that works." It's barely a question. It's more of a door cracked open just slightly, and she waits to see if he'll notice it's even there. And here's what happens next, almost every single time. A certain kind of man smiles warmly and says something like, "Oh, you should, it's wonderful," with absolutely no idea he just fumbled the easiest opening of the entire conversation. He thinks he's being polite. He thinks he's being encouraging. What he doesn't realize is that she was never after a recommendation. She wasn't asking for his opinion on the place. She was waiting for him to say, "Let's go Thursday." She floated it gently right over the plate, and he watched it sail clean past without ever swinging. Let's slow down and really understand why this happens, because it's not that men are unintelligent or unobservant in other areas of life. It's that this particular kind of communication runs on an entirely different frequency than the direct practical communication most men are used to. Most men, especially men who've spent decades in careers built on clear directives and straightforward problem solving, are wired to respond to statements at face value. She said she wants to check out a jazz place. The practical, helpful response is to validate that desire. "You should. It's great. Mission accomplished, right?" Except the mission was never what it appeared to be on the surface. What she actually said underneath the casual wrapping was something closer to an invitation dressed up as a passing comment, specifically so that if you don't pick up on it, she hasn't put herself in a position to be flatly rejected. This is the key to understanding almost everything about this kind of signal. It's designed with an escape hatch built in. If you don't take the opening, she can tell herself it was never really an invitation in the first place, just idle conversation. That protects her from the sting of a direct no. But if you do take it, if you catch the door she left open and simply walk through it, she gets exactly what she was hoping for without ever having to risk asking for it outright. This is why the response matters so much, and why the automatic, well-meaning reply so many men give actually does the opposite of what they intend. When you say, "Oh, you should, it's wonderful," you've technically been kind and encouraging, but you've also, without meaning to, told her that you didn't hear the invitation at all, or worse, that you heard it and chose not to take it. Either way, the door she opened just quietly closed again, and she'll usually try it once more before deciding it was probably a mistake and quietly moving on. So what does the right response actually sound like? It's remarkably simple once you know what you're listening for. When she says, "I've always wanted to check out that jazz place downtown," the man who catches the signal doesn't respond with a recommendation. He responds with a plan. "Let's go this Thursday then," or even simpler, "I'll take you." Notice how little effort that actually requires. You're not overthinking it. You're not crafting some elaborate response. You're simply taking the invitation at face value and matching her energy with a concrete next step instead of a vague endorsement. This works because it does two things simultaneously. First, it shows her you were actually listening, not just to the words, but to what was underneath them. That kind of attentiveness is rare and deeply noticed by women who've spent years around men who only half listen while waiting for their turn to talk. Second, it removes the risk from her side entirely. She floated something vulnerable, wrapped in casual language specifically so it wouldn't feel vulnerable if you didn't respond. When you respond with a plan instead of a compliment, you're essentially telling her, "You didn't need the safety net. I caught it and I want the same thing." Now, there's a second version of this signal that's slightly different but works on the exact same principle, and it's worth understanding separately because it shows up just as often. This is when she asks something like, "You'll have to show me how that works sometime," referring to anything from a hobby to a skill to something as simple as how you make your coffee a particular way. On the surface, this sounds like curiosity about the activity itself. Underneath, it's almost always curiosity about spending time with you specifically, using the activity as the comfortable, low-pressure vehicle to make that happen. The mistake here is nearly identical to the jazz club example. A man explains the process verbally, maybe even seems flattered that she asked, and completely misses that the actual ask was for shared time, not information. I'll show you some time isn't really a full answer either, because some time has no weight to it. It's vague enough to never actually happen, and both of you know it, even if neither of you says so out loud. The stronger response names an actual moment. Come by Saturday morning, I'll show you. Concrete beats vague every single time when it comes to signals like this, because vagueness is what lets both people quietly back away from something without ever having to acknowledge it was there. Here's why this particular signal is so easy for men your age to miss, even though you're often better equipped than younger men to catch most of the other subtler signals we've talked about in other videos. This one specifically requires a kind of confident decisiveness in the moment, an ability to hear an opening and step through it immediately, without hesitation, without overthinking whether you're reading too much into it. And a lot of men, especially men who've been out of the dating world for a while, whether through a long marriage, a divorce, or simply years focused on other things, have gotten out of practice with that particular kind of quick, confident response. The hesitation itself, even just a beat too long, often reads as the answer, and she moves on assuming you weren't interested, when the truth was simply that you needed half a second longer to process what was actually happening. The good news is that this is entirely fixable, and it doesn't require you to become someone you're not. It just requires recognizing the pattern when it shows up. Anytime a woman mentions something she'd like to do, see, or learn, and does it in your presence, in a conversation with you specifically, treat that as a door, not a piece of trivia about her interests. Your job isn't to validate the interest. Your job is to offer yourself as the person who helps her do the thing. That's the entire shift. Stop responding to the surface content of what she said, and start responding to the underlying invitation sitting quietly beneath it. And here's the thing that should actually make this easier rather than harder, especially at your age. You've had decades of practice reading rooms, reading situations, reading people, in business, in friendships, in family dynamics. This isn't a fundamentally different skill than the ones you've already built over a lifetime. It's simply applying that same pattern recognition to a context most men have never been explicitly taught to look for. Once you see it, once you understand that we should do that sometime is functionally identical to an invitation, just wrapped in deniability for her protection, you genuinely can't unhear it anymore. You'll start noticing it in conversations you would have breezed right past a month ago. One last thing worth saying clearly, because it matters. This isn't about turning every offhand comment into a grand romantic gesture, and it isn't about treating every casual remark as some hidden code you have to decrypt. Most conversation really is just conversation. But when a specific pattern shows up, an expressed desire to do or learn something, paired with your presence in that exact moment, that combination is worth paying attention to. She'll try it, at most once or twice. After that, she'll quietly file you under not interested and stop leaving the door open at all, not because she's given up on you specifically, but because nobody keeps offering an invitation that never gets accepted. So here's what I want you to actually carry with you from this. The next time a woman mentions something she's always wanted to do and she's saying it directly to you in a real conversation, don't respond with encouragement. Respond with a plan. Name a day. Name a time. Take the door she left open and simply walk through it like a man who knows exactly what just happened, because now you do. If this helped you catch something you might have missed before, stay close, because next time we're covering why she keeps circling back to you throughout an entire evening and what that pattern actually means once you learn to see the whole shape of it instead of just one conversation at a time.